Tonight, a new power move may be unfolding in the Middle East. While global headlines remain focused on Iran, Gaza, and U.S. deployments across the region, another development is beginning to attract serious attention inside military and diplomatic circles. Russia is increasing visible activity connected to Lebanon. And if that trend continues, it could open an entirely new front in the struggle for influence between Moscow, Washington, and Jerusalem. Because this is not simply about Lebanon. It is about access, leverage, and who shapes the next phase of the Middle East crisis. For years, Lebanon has existed at the intersection of larger powers. It borders Israel, sits beside Syria, contains competing political factions, hosts one of the most powerful armed movements in the region through Hezbollah, and remains economically fragile, politically divided, and strategically exposed. That makes Lebanon more than a country. It makes it a pressure point. Now, reports of renewed Russian movement tied to Lebanon, whether through aircraft activity, diplomatic channels, logistics coordination, or indirect military positioning, are being watched carefully by multiple governments. Why? Because timing matters, and timing right now is everything. Israel remains under pressure on multiple fronts. The United States continues military deployments to deter wider escalation. Iran is recalibrating after recent pressure campaigns. Hezbollah remains a constant strategic variable on Israel's northern border. And now Russia appears to be reminding everyone that it still has cards to play. To understand why this matters, we need to look at Moscow's history in the region. Russia did not become relevant in the Middle East overnight. Through Syria, Moscow secured naval access, air bases, intelligence reach, and political influence. It positioned itself as a power that could talk to Iran, Israel, Gulf states, and regional militias at the same time. That flexibility became one of Russia's biggest advantages. Even rivals had to engage with Moscow. Now, if Russia expands visible activity involving Lebanon, it sends several possible messages at once. First, to Israel, do not assume the northern arena belongs only to local actors. Second, to the United States, Russia still has the ability to complicate Western strategy in the region. Third, to Iran and Hezbollah, Moscow remains present and available when strategic equations change. And fourth, to the wider world, Russia is not disappearing from Middle Eastern politics. Now let's be clear. This does not necessarily mean Russian troops marching into Lebanon. It does not automatically mean new bases or open confrontation. Modern influence often works differently. It can mean advisors, cargo flights, intelligence support, economic agreements, energy deals, political mediation, and strategic signaling. Sometimes one aircraft landing creates more impact than one battalion arriving because presence changes calculations. Israel understands this very well. For Israeli planners, Lebanon is one of the most sensitive theaters in the region. Any shift involving Hezbollah, missile systems, logistics corridors, or foreign actors immediately triggers attention. If Russia becomes more visible there, every future operation becomes more complicated. Could Russian personnel be nearby? Could surveillance assets be active? Could diplomatic fallout follow military action? Could new weapon systems quietly arrive later? Even if none of that is confirmed, uncertainty itself creates deterrent value, and deterrence built through ambiguity is often the most effective kind. Now consider Washington. The United States has invested enormous military and diplomatic resources to remain the dominant external power in the Middle East through carrier groups, air bases, missile defense, strategic alliances, and economic pressure networks. but dominance is challenged whenever another power can suddenly shift the conversation. If Russia can force US planners to monitor Lebanon more closely while America is already stretched across multiple global theaters, that is strategic pressure. Not direct confrontation. Pressure. And pressure is often cheaper and more sustainable than conflict. Now let's examine Lebanon's own role. Lebanon is not simply a passive stage. It has its own internal factions, institutions, and competing visions. Some groups may welcome greater Russian involvement as a balancing force. Others may fear deeper foreign interference. Still others may see Moscow as a useful counterweight to both Western pressure and regional instability. That means any Russian move into Lebanon creates both external and internal consequences, and that complexity can be useful to Moscow because fragmented environments often reward flexible powers. Russia has repeatedly shown that it prefers operating in complex arenas where no single actor controls the board. Now here is another possibility analysts are discussing. What if Russia is positioning itself not for war, but for diplomacy? This is extremely important. When tensions rise too high, every side eventually looks for channels of communication, and Russia has historically tried to present itself as a broker that can speak to enemies who refuse to speak directly. Israel, Iran, Syria, Lebanese factions, even indirect channels with the West. So visible Russian movement around Lebanon may also be about reminding all sides that when the crisis reaches its most dangerous point, Moscow expects a seat at the table. That is influence, and influence often matters more than weapons. But there is also a darker scenario. More actors in one unstable theater means more risk. More surveillance flights, more naval patrols, more radar locks, more misread intentions, more accidental escalation. History is filled with conflicts that began not with deliberate plans, but with confusion between heavily armed powers operating too close together. That is why military professionals worry whenever strategic congestion increases. Now think about the broader map. Gaza remains unresolved. Israel's northern front remains tense. Iran still projects power through networks across the region. Shipping routes remain vulnerable. Energy markets remain sensitive. And US-Russia rivalry continues globally. Add Lebanon to that equation, and suddenly one country becomes the hinge of several simultaneous crises. That is exactly why this story matters. Now let's talk about optics. Politics today is visual. Aircraft arrivals, flags on runways, convoys, meetings, satellite images. Every image becomes narrative material. If Russian activity in Lebanon is seen publicly, it creates a message of momentum, and momentum shapes perception. Perception shapes confidence. Confidence shapes policy. This is why symbolic moves are never just symbolic. They can create real strategic effects. Now, what might Israel do next? Likely increase intelligence monitoring, strengthen readiness in the north, quietly coordinate with Washington, and evaluate whether any Russian presence changes operational freedom. Israel rarely overreacts publicly, but it calculates intensely behind closed doors. What about the United States? Expect more surveillance, more diplomatic messaging, and close monitoring of any cargo, personnel, or agreements linked to Lebanon. Washington may also seek to reassure allies that no vacuum is emerging. And what about Russia? If this is a test move, Moscow will watch reactions carefully. If rivals react strongly, Russia learns where pressure points exist. If reactions are weak, Moscow may expand activity. This is how strategic probing works. Now let's address the headline claim: is Putin challenging Israel and the US? Directly, perhaps not yet. But indirectly, absolutely possible. Because challenge does not always mean attack. Sometimes challenge means entering spaces others assumed were theirs to manage. Sometimes challenge means forcing stronger powers to divide attention. Sometimes challenge means proving relevance in a region where others hoped you had faded. And if that is what is happening, then yes, this is a challenge. Now let's look ahead to the next 30 days. 3 scenarios stand out. Scenario 1: limited symbolism. Russia makes a visible move, gains headlines, and stops there. Scenario 2: sustained influence. More flights, more meetings, more agreements, and deeper positioning inside Lebanon. Scenario 3: crisis trigger. Another regional event occurs, and Russian presence suddenly becomes central to the response. Right now, no one knows which path is coming. That uncertainty is the real story, because uncertainty forces militaries to prepare for all possibilities, and preparation changes behavior before anything even happens. So while many viewers may see only another geopolitical headline, strategists see something else. They see Russia testing whether it can reopen influence in one of the most sensitive places on Earth. They see Israel recalculating the northern front. They see Washington being forced to watch yet another theater. They see Lebanon once again becoming the crossroads of bigger powers. And they see a region where the next move may not come from the actors everyone expects. That is what makes this moment dangerous, and that is what makes it important. Because when major powers begin repositioning during a volatile crisis, it usually means the public story is only the beginning. Tonight, Russia may not simply be entering Lebanon. It may be entering the next chapter of the Middle East struggle. And if that is true, then Israel and America are not leading the board tonight. They are reacting to it. Stay tuned, because the next move may already be in the air.